Hello, hello everyone. We're gonna get rolling. It's a big room. I apologize, but we have a bigger event happening a little bit later. Didn't make sense to wall it off. So anyway, if you want to bring it in, great. If not, we can make sure you're comfortable where you are. There's plenty of coffee and whatnot outside, so load up. I'm still caffeinating myself. I'm Nick Sargent, president of SIA, and welcome to 2019 Industry and Intelligence. And we have a packed day and some great panels, some great speakers, some amazing topics. And this one specific that we're going to dive into is really important to all of us and our industry. And that is this slippery slopes of trade and tariffs. And Angela Hoffman here for People of Free Trade is going to lead the panel discussion. And so I'm going to turn it over to her and let her dive in and take us through this.
Great.
So, Angela.
Thanks. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to just take a moment and give a little bit of framing about trade and tariffs, because I think in this world there's a lot that's kind of complex. So I'm going to set the scene, and then we're going to have a fantastic panel discussion. So a lot of these numbers, a lot of this, we call it the trade gobbledygook. It's the NAFTAs, it's the CAFTAs. For those who are in trade world, we love to make it really complex. It's the AFTA NAFTAs. And we started throwing in numbers as well. So you're going to walk away from this panel having some idea about what to watch and how to get involved. So 3 big things I want you to take away. NAFTA, this is North America Free Trade Agreement, US, Canada, Mexico. It's now the USMCA. Yes, you can do the dance, UMCA. It's going to be the one to watch. We're trying to get this thing done. Congress is going to pass it soon. 232, that is a big number because we're talking about steel and aluminum, and just about everything in this country is touched by it. And 301, no, it is not a zip code. It means a tariff use that's happening between China and the US. So quick things, quick overview. Here's what you got to be watching. NAFTA, or now the USMCA. It's signed by the countries. It's really important because it integrates North America. And a lot of what we will be talking about on this panel is how do you sort of work with these partners, not just in Asia, but in our backyard. It needs to be approved by Congress, so this is going to be a big lift. Everyone needs to be involved. And there's still this threat that at the end of the day, the president could potentially withdraw, which would be sort of the worst case scenario. So this was a signing for steel and aluminum. I talked about that 232 in March of last year, so we're coming up on a year anniversary. The president actually authorized the use of a really old tool. It was used actually during Korea to help with domestic steel production. And in this case, it was used for national security interests. So big steel and aluminum tariffs, 15% on aluminum imported, 25% on steel were imposed on all countries with the exception of a handful of few. Now, you might think about why do we care? Well, think about the steel and aluminum that you might see in this industry and all the areas that may be impacted, and you're seeing these cost increases. And then, of course, because this was used for national security reason, a lot of our trading partners like Canada, Mexico, Europe, our longtime national security partners, started reacting. So no action without reaction. They've started retaliating as well and putting on tariffs on things like this, all the great stuff that we export around the world. Yes, apples, cheese, potatoes, wine. So if that wasn't enough, it got really exciting then into May of last year, and many of our panelists had the opportunity, you testified in Congress as well, about what to do about China. And a lot to do with China has to do with protecting our intellectual property, our good ideas that need to be protected. And that's great. This tool allows us to do this. It's a unilateral choice that the president gets to put some tariffs on to sort of right those wrongs. But it fully escalated into a full-on trade war. And we now find ourselves where both countries are imposing billions of dollars in tariffs on our products coming in and out of the country. Now, the reason I put this in here, a lot of those products, yes, right now we're kind of upside down. We are in the midst of probably the greatest trade dispute we've ever seen in our industry, and it's impacting every one of your businesses. So this team, we're going to talk about it today, how we can get involved. We don't want you to be stuck in the snow. We want you to be skiing down the slopes and doing really well. So we're going to offer some ideas about how to have that happen. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panel first to introduce themselves and share a little bit about their business, and then we're going to have a conversation about how do we navigate these troubled times. So Patrick, I'm going to turn it to you first. We have Patrick Fox, who is with VF Corporation.
Thank you. I don't have to go to the mic. The mic's on me.
Yep.
Patrick Fox. I'm Senior Director of Customs and Trade Strategy for VF Corporation. If you don't know VF, we are the parent company of brands like North Face, Eagle Creek, JanSport, Vans, and Timberland, and many others in the outdoor space. I started as I think I'm the only custom specialist on the panel. I've been in the industry almost 25 years, and I agree, Angela, this is the most significant event, trade disruption, if you want to call it that I've seen. Since I'm the only custom specialist, they've tasked me with going through all 9,000 codes during the hour session this morning. So, put on your seatbelts. No, seriously, we're not going to do that. VF, and I think the handout, Angela, you gave is paint a picture, the importance of trade to our industry or our company. And I thought about that. And for VF, the importance of trade obviously is real. It's very important. But to paint the picture, any one of us can go on VFC.com. There's a great resource gives statistics of our supply chain, and where we describe, nearly 500 million units we source and ship annually from about 1,000 contractors, independent contractors, 21 of our own internally produced manufacturing facilities across 50 countries globally. I don't even know the number of markets. It's certainly around the same, around 50 countries. So trade is real. Every one of those nearly 500 million units crosses a border at least once in its life. But if you back down, levels in the supply chain, it's really a global value chain. All the inputs that go into making those products move across borders at least once or twice in their lifetimes as well. So then there's support industries, there's logistics, there's customs, there's air freight. Everything that goes around this is a totality of a extremely important global value chain. So the importance of trade is fundamental to what we do at VF, and I think that transcends the industry as well. So appreciate all of you attending Tariff and Trade at 9 a.m., the kickoff of OR. Glad you're here, and hope you enjoy the conversation.
Thank you. Great. Now, VF is obviously a very large company and can manage this very, very thoughtfully, but we have some local businesses who are also impacted. So I'm going to next turn it over to Russ Coburn from Dance Mountain Sports to share a little bit about his business and why he's concerned.
Hi, my name is Lou. Can you hear me? Hello. Is my mic on? Can you hear me? Yeah. There we go. Hi, I'm Russ Coburn, President and CEO of Jan's in Park City, Utah. We're the Jan's that's not owned by VF. We are not JanSport, like everybody gets us confused. Jan's has 12 operations between Colorado, Utah, and British Columbia. We're in the skiing business, the mountain biking business, and the fly fishing business. This whole trade agreement is very important. I've just joined the AFTA board on the American Fly Fishing Trade Association, and we got together last month here in Denver and spoke on the exact same situation that's affecting the industry. We met with OIA at the time, and I know they're taking a lead in this, and we look forward to hopefully with our wonderful manufacturers like Dino here getting through the next couple of years.
Right. And then Dino?
I'm Dino Dardano. I'm president of Hestra Gloves. I manage the U.S. operations, or the Americas. We've been based in Golden, Colorado for about 15 years, and Saturday moved into our new permanent home facility in Arvada, Colorado. We've had tremendous success in the U.S. market. Hestra is a small glove manufacturer based out of Hestra, Sweden, 80-year-old family business. 4 generations, soon to be 5. Just an amazing company to work for. We do one thing, we build gloves. We bring premium leathers and materials together and feel our products are exceptional, very durable. We've been, like I said, very successful globally. We're distributed in 26 countries, over 6,000 retailers today, and we employ about 800 people globally. We have 4 factories, 2 in China, a new addition in Vietnam, about 2 years old, and a Hungarian factory, which is about 6, 7 years old. So globally, we produce over about 2 million pairs of gloves for the ski, dress, and work industry annually.
Right. Thanks. And Nick, thank you for the introduction and having us here today. You've been very active on this topic and testified before Congress. Share a little bit more about why this industry should be getting involved in this discussion and debate today.
Yes, so this came across our radar in May, as it did everyone else. And right away, we knew this was going to be an extremely impactful topic. It was going to have a cause, it was going to have an effect. And at the end of the day, these potential increased prices at the time and now increased prices were going to affect the margins of the supplier, because most of the product had been ordered and was in production at the time this came to the table. So as the advocacy group for our 1,200 members and working on your behalf, it was very important that we get ahead of this. And we're not alone, as Russ mentioned. We're working in lockstep with OIA and a number of other groups who are representing other constituents in our space. And we really wanted to get the word out to our members so they knew what was coming down the pipe. And surprisingly enough, probably greater than 3/4 of our members had no idea in August that this was even a conversation. And so we really ratcheted up our communications to our members, but also on snowsports.org had a list of actions that our members could take to reach out to their senators, reach out to their congressmen, reach out to their local powers that be, and really get involved and really rally around this. And as Angela mentioned, I went to Washington a number of times and specifically testified in front of the Trade Commission, which was enlightening. And I was just speaking to Angela before the panel. I was in my snow sports frame of mind, and it was really eye-opening for me to see the broad spectrum. And I was one of 60 people on that one specific day. But we had farmers, we had agricultural leaders, we had construction, and we had resource groups. But we also had very small business owners who were being affected by this trade agreement and these imposed tariffs. And so for me, it really took in the big picture, a small conversation, a big conversation in our world, but it really made it much broader. And that was really helpful to get some perspective. And we scoured the original list of over 10,000 units. And we could only identify five product categories. And helmets being one of those. And fortunately, with the help of OIA, Giro, and Bell, we were able to get the helmets removed from that tariff list and exempt. But we failed on a number of other of these categories, one being gloves, which affects Dino directly and affects JANS as well as the end of the road before the consumer touches that piece of product. So nevertheless, this is a big topic where we've been charging on this, and we've also been working with our outdoor association group, Outdoor Recreation Roundtable in Washington as well, to help represent us and you. While we're here, they're not stopping. And so know that we're on top of this, and we'll have a lot more updates to come. But this is, again, as Angela said, an exciting topic and one that we're hoping to mitigate.
That's great. I'm just going to put one slide up here too. So breaking news every day. You see something new, it usually comes on Twitter, but we're all trying to track it. And again, part of what's going to be coming up is this March 1st deadline. And March 1st deadline, we have sort of a ceasefire, which is a good thing. And I think that's largely because folks like you have been involved in this process saying, let's take time to get to talks versus tariffs, keeping in mind that tariffs are a tax, right? And we'll talk about that more as well and why that's so important in this discussion. But come March 1st, there's hope that there would be some sort of deal structured with China so we could see that the use of these tariffs go away or mitigated. So it's a big date to watch. Let's talk about mitigation though. And what are companies doing? You know, things could get better, things could get a whole lot worse. How are you managing this through? And let's maybe start with VF. What are you thinking about? What recommendations do you have for businesses trying to navigate these troubled times?
Sure. So VF, you know, one key word that describes our supply chain is balance. You know, we're not overly dependent on any one country or producer within countries. And, you know, the normal planning and the normal strategy that you might implement, that we implement in supply chain to give us speed, agility, flexibility, as well as to anticipate disruptions that might occur naturally. There might be natural disasters. There's always the risk of political risk in countries where we source. So our normal strategy to kind of prepare or foresee risks like this have served us well in this times where trade disruptions, you know, surface, and we, you know, it's afforded us the flexibility to move sourcing where needed. We have very good systems that give us transparency and visibility into product categories that might be affected, where are they sourced, what are the volumes, so that we can react efficiently. And in addition to that, you know, participation in the dialogue, our government affairs initiatives through industry associations like the OIA or the AAFA. So maintaining a dialogue. And then within the company, we have a trade committee that meets on a regular basis to review risks, opportunities, threats, so that we're all aligned and we're making coherent decisions.
Right. You know, that theme of we're all in this together. In fact, this whole initiative is also really supported by two different groups. You mentioned the Farmers for Free Trade have been very deeply involved, Americans for Free Trade. There's over 160 associations right now working together. And that spans across outdoor sports, to boats, to games, to retail, to restaurants, to economic development. Think of anything that goes into building a big building. And I think that's just been a very powerful opportunity to share those voices and stories. Speaking of voices and stories, we want this to have an interactive piece with our audience too. So we're going to ask a few more questions and then we'd love to hear from you in the audience. But let's talk about smaller businesses and sort of growth. And you know, Hester, you just moved into a new facility. You're growing your business. What advice would you give for those who are trying to grow their business even during this time of sort of uncertainty?
I think, you know, first and foremost, we found out about this midsummer like everybody else. And I have to be honest with you, I was shocked that ski gloves, leather gloves, so it's baseball gloves, how American is that, are included on this list. And I don't understand why, but it really was an eye-opener for me and the Magnuson family that diversification is really what it's all about. If you're a small startup and you're putting all your eggs in the China basket, something like this happens, you're out of business. Luckily for Hestra, we've been able to mitigate this 10% increase. In the third quarter, we started reacting pretty aggressively, air freighting everything we could to get it in before it went into place. And then after that, obviously, we got hit with the 10% surcharge. So there was a cost to Hestra, but we believe our purchase orders are contracts with our customers, like Jan's, and we're committed to that. So we didn't immediately call Russ and say, you know, your prices are going up 10%. We assumed that. Obviously, as this moves forward and if it continues, that's going to be passed on to the retailer. is because of Vietnam and Hungary, we're able to shift our production about 70% into those factories. So for the European market, we will continue to manufacture out of our China factories and then focus on Vietnam and Hungary for the US market till all this goes away. I'm being very optimistic. I think come March, this is all going to go away. The impact of it going to 25% would be very detrimental to the ski industry. We're at a premium price point already, tacking on the 25% in addition to anywhere from 5 to 15% duties. We're looking at a potential duty of 40%. I do have fears that it'll impact our industry if other items are added. So I think diversification, is, to answer your question, is probably the best thing that anybody looking to manufacture abroad should look at.
Great. And then, we hear in your business as well, Russ, that, lots of families are involved. It's a customer-facing business that you're in. How are you managing that with your customer now, and what tips would you have for those who are managing small businesses?
Well, a couple of comments first. As Dina was saying, whatever ends up being passed on to us gets passed on to you, the consumer. The first thing is when we reached out to the other retailers, we just said communicate. Get hold of every manufacturer you have out there, find out how they're going to handle it. Like Dino just said, he's found a way to eat that 10%. Diversify, you're open to buy with your people. You still have an open to buy. You may buy just a little bit less, but you'll sell just the same dollar amount, you hope. The consumer will make the final decision, not us as the retailer. We're in a resort town, or in most of the resort towns, and we'll have a little less impact than those in the cities and the e-commerce platforms. So we're just diversifying and see how that has a long-term effect.
Yeah. Now, the challenge, of course, being in a resort town is you've got a brewery, you've got a restaurant, and they're all seeing cost increases as well. And so, it adds up at the end of the day when you have those folks coming to town to invest in your economy.
Correct.
So let's open it up a little bit to the audience, and would love to have some of your thoughts or reflections if you are impacted, and continue with our panel. No, it's not a shy bunch. Yes, good morning.
Hi, Rich Harper, Outdoor Industry Association. In order for Nick and Patrick to talk about your interactions with members of Congress and sort of what the reaction you've gotten from elected representatives and what feedback you've gotten for, first of all, for showing up and sharing your story, but what advice they've given you and what you think their reaction has been to the impact of the industry.
Sure. Great question. Our reaction that we've received is very different than maybe an agricultural group or a resource group, primarily because there's an emotional connection to winter sport. And it's amazing when you're talking to senators and congressmen, the first thing they'll say is, "Oh my God, I love skiing," or "Oh, I love coming to Park City. I love Deer Valley." Of course you do. Anyway, it's so the conversation takes on a whole new direction because we do have that emotional connection. And when I was testifying, I did see a lot of the board kind of dozing off and kind of focusing with their phones when they were talking to the agricultural group or the resource group. And when I was my turn, everyone sparked up and everyone had a little bit of a smile or a smirk, and a lot of them shared stories that they participate. So again, it was that emotional connection. But they have all shared the same advice: keep chipping away at it. You're a big group. You represent a very healthy outdoor, larger economy. This isn't just a ski association. It is all of us outdoor, ski, snowboard, accessories, hard goods, soft goods, so on and so forth. And keep working on this. Reach out to your local officials, reach out to your state officials, reach out to your congressmen, and don't give up. And I think that was really great advice, and it really helped us in our motivation, but it also helped having conversations with you all and knowing that we have other groups that we can communicate with. As Russ mentioned, communication is the key element here. And if we can mobilize as an outdoor group And as from a retailer to a supplier to a large corporation, we're checking the boxes and we're getting more people involved.
I would just add to Russ's comments that at VF, we want leadership to arrive at mutually agreeable trade pacts on both sides. We want them to have, in particular, point of view of the impact on our industry, noting that our industry across apparel and footwear and travel goods already, under normal circumstances, face some of the highest MFN, most favored nation tariffs across all the categories. And Rich, a lot of the work that we've done in the past, we present to members of Congress the impact of the recreation economy. OIA's done a lot of great work, and with studies that drill down to the district level, the economic impact of outdoor recreation participation rates. And normal tariffs, and certainly punitive tariffs, are nothing more than a tax on people's ability to participate and get outdoors. Mm-hmm. So echoing his comments that this is real and it hits home for people. They may not be able to get the gear. They need to go outside and enjoy what we have out here.
Great. Yes, sir.
What are retailers saying when you communicate that? How are they reacting?
Because we were able to mitigate the increase and we didn't have any production increases this year, it's kind of status quo. We haven't had a lot of pushback, but again, come March, maybe a different conversation. And we're reserving the right to adjust pricing depending on the current political situation. I definitely think it'll affect our volume as a company. When you're looking at a ski glove that's approaching $200, so I think hopefully it goes away. But thus far, we haven't seen much pushback at all. Our best retailers are growing their business with Hestra, which is very encouraging.
Echoing Dino's comments, the impact has really been negligible to VF. We've been able to diversify and use our leverage and flexibility to mitigate most of the impact. So it hasn't flowed through the supply chain.
The one thing that's come up from a lot of retailers I've talked to is they've just said, don't run away from your good partners. Stick through these tough times and we'll see what happens.
Nice. Yes.
I think you talked about the process you went through to go through the list of like 10,000 products or categories, and that you identified helmets and you worked with Sigiro and Bell.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that looked like in terms of the work you did to get them removed from the list, and maybe what you learned in that wasn't successful without being gloves removed?
Mm-hmm. And can we also share one thing?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll follow up with the exemption process and what that looks like as well.
Mm-hmm. So it's, again, when we saw the first 301 list, and I immediately went to the right side of my screen and saw my little scroll bar go from an inch down to maybe a millimeter, and I was like, oh, better get comfortable, and we're going to be here for a while. But and it was amazing to see the list of products, medical, automotive, defense, so on and so forth, as we were saying earlier. And it was very unclear to us when we did identify a few of these categories, and it wasn't ski helmets, it was safety helmets. So we reached out to some of our lobbying groups that we work with in DC to get a ruling on that, because it wasn't clear to us if it was construction safety helmets or was it baseball helmet or hockey helmet, which it was all the above. And so ski and snowboarding helmets were aligned with that. And the same thing with leather gloves, and as Dino mentioned, it was leather sport gloves, I believe was what it was called. So we had to boil that down and get distinction. And so immediately we called our members in the helmet business. So it was, Brico and POC and Anon and Bell and Giro. are you aware? What's your plan? What are you going to do to mitigate this? What can we do to help? And so we went through maybe a 10-step process with each of these brands to figure out what they were doing. Again, you know, as we were saying, by communicating with them and working with them to come up with a plan, it made it easier for us to attack testifying. And really, the distinction with safety helmets was just that. It's a safety piece used to mitigate any form of accident or injury. And we all know that you know, death is a reality in skiing and snowboarding in certain levels, and our sports experience that frequently. So when you position a helmet as a way to save lives, that has a greater effect with the Trade and Commission group than, say, a glove, which was there too. And again, we tried to position it as protection from the cold, but it didn't really resonate. And so it was a number of us that were testifying against these specific categories, but helmets was the clear winner, at least grabbing their attention to be exempt.
So there's the list and getting those products off the list. And there's also been an exemption process in steel and aluminum, not all products. So do you want to talk a little bit sort of on how the exemption process does or does not work?
From my perspective, you know, looking at the first rounds of these punitive tariffs that came in for steel and aluminum, it seemed to me there was a fairly well-defined process. There was a rush by all the parties affected and probably overwhelmed the Department of Commerce. With this latest tranche, the Section 301 tariffs, the third list that's touched more on our industry, there really is no process, at least that we're aware of. And I think this has been one of the communications as we do engagement work with members of Congress and administration, that we'd like clarification. We'd like to be afforded the ability to make arguments such as with helmets and all of the other products. I don't think we're afforded an exemption process at this point.
Yeah, it's been a big concern. And certainly, I mean, this is technically for a trade negotiating tool to talk about something on intellectual property. Ultimately, the tariff going away would be something I think would be the optimal result. You know, talk a little bit too about telling your story and how effective that is. And have you been in contact with your members of Congress and others? And what are you telling them?
I have. I've written some letters, but obviously Nick has done a great job, and SIA voicing our opinions as manufacturers, and I really appreciate SIA's efforts. The whole list and the exemptions, I understand safety helmets, makes total sense. Car seats were exempt as well, makes total sense. The thing I don't understand is plastic yard furniture, how that got exempt. And now it's my understanding that they're precluding anybody from applying to be exempt during this period. You know, gloves I consider as a safety item. I don't know how many have dropped a glove off the lift and had to ski down to find it and dig through the snow. You can't ski without gloves. And how we ended up on that list, I don't understand. And being totally humble here, have always thought as tariffs is keeping jobs in the U.S. But there is no glove manufacturing in the U.S., and it's not coming back. You can go to Gloversville, New York, and drive through the town, and you'll see what I've seen. So unfortunately, with sewn goods, it's domestic or broad production. That's the only way to be competitive with sewing. And we're seeing that changing in China today with you know, hourly wages, the one-child law. People, you know, they don't want to be in sewing gloves for, that's not what they're passionate about or what they want to pursue. So, you know, we do the best we can. We're very passionate about what we do. And we're going to weather this storm with our great retailers and organizations like SIA. And, you know, we'll get through it. We're going to succeed.
Yeah. In such important areas, as a skier myself, I always appreciate a good pair of gloves. So, you know, Russ, as well, you've been in touch with your local officials. What are you telling folks? And are you telling your mayors as well, your governors? How are you getting folks involved in this discussion?
Almost the same way. We work through Nick with SIA, Ben Bulis with AFTA, and the meeting with OIA. And those three voices are very powerful. I don't know who is talking right now for the cycling industry. I am meeting with a couple of people right after this meeting to find out who's going to help the mountain bike and road biking world and the componentry. So we'll wait and see.
Great. Let's go back to our audience to see if you have any questions. Yes, sir.
How do organizations stratify their appeal for the tariffs to like the real small organizations that are maybe heavily concentrated in China versus large companies like VF that's diversified, much smaller impact? Because in a market where there's a lot of consolidations out there, obviously, if the tariffs come through, it's going to real impact the consolidations for smaller companies that can't afford to pass that on to retailers. How do they really get the voice for the smaller companies out there and get that impact communication?
That's another great question as well. And so of our members, obviously we have the very smallest member, just a two-person team working out of their garage, all the way up to the larger conglomerate outdoor brand. And so our job isn't really to distinguish one way or another, but it's to build actions and opportunities that each group can use to help their business. And again, if you go to snowsports.org and you go to the link, I think it's under advocacy, that's where you'll see all the things that you can do as a small group. But you can also band with other groups of your same size to create a louder voice. And again, that's what we did with the helmets and the gloves out of the box, knowing that was going to be a big issue. And get as many of your constituencies, colleagues, friends to create that louder voice. And we understand that the effect from the smaller organization is potentially dire. And so we're very concerned about that. And that goes right down to the retailer and then to that end consumer. We do understand that larger groups, have different action plans and are able to be more nimble than a smaller group. So again, that's why we're trying to create different programs that work for the smaller groups as well.
Tyler, you want to respond to that as well?
I would say if you're a smaller company and you're feeling the impact, you don't have a government affairs department, you don't have the luxury of sending people to Washington, engaging, then join the associations, OIA, SIA, AAFA. They can consolidate the efforts. In fact, this afternoon, we'll sit down with the OIA, which has a trade advisory council, and it's comprised of big companies like mine and smaller companies like Sims Fishing and many others. So members from those companies come to the table, and we consolidate, our concerns and map out a strategy, so everyone benefits through the association's efforts.
Great. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Patricia Rojas with OIA. Patrick, could you speak to how the tariffs have an impact not only on your ability to sell to the U.S. consumer, but also to export your product and maintaining it competitive to other brands that perhaps don't face the tariffs?
Sure. The impact of the tariffs thus far has been negligible. The list of categories across the breadth of categories that VF produces is very limited. And as I mentioned earlier, our supply chain agility and flexibility allows us to move production. There are, obviously China is a center of focus, and China is an important strategic marketplace for VF. So we monitor the developments. We are sensitive to the fact that China is a growing marketplace, and these disputes may may impact Chinese consumers' perceptions. But we feel good about how the negotiations are going. There are retaliatory tariffs that China has placed on U.S. exports. So, for example, U.S. leather producers export to China. What is the impact and where are those costs absorbed? The U.S. textile industry is an exporter of raw materials, of yarns, of fabrics to China as well, and are maybe subject to those same tariffs. So, we spend a good deal of time data mining and monitoring and looking into the supply chain. We work with our sourcing office and our Asia businesses to understand and manage the risks as they arise.
Great question. Other questions? There's a tool you can use today too, and I'm going to put it up on the slide.
We've got one over
Oh, a question over here. Yes, great.
This is kind of a follow-on to that answer, but in 1 month, we're either going to breathe a sigh of relief or we're going to mobilize our supply chains to move in different directions. So, and as Patrick said, the news coming out is favorable, but we've seen that before. What indicators are groups like you all looking at to think that maybe this is going to end up being positive? More news that comes out about impacting consumers, or is it more large corporations missing their earnings because of the issues with China? What are you guys watching to see if there's going to be a deal or no deal?
I think from my perspective, we're just watching the news as diligently as everyone else. And, what we're seeing in Washington is so unpredictable in general. It's hard to have an indicator. And obviously the November meetings in South America, were favorable. That was good. And then, a lot of government chatter has been kind of camouflaged over with what's happening around the wall, which is good. But again, the problem's not going to go away, and so we have to stay diligent and just prepare for the worst, and hopefully expect the best. And so that's as best as we can do. We're, like we said, we're talking with all of our trade friends and groups, and working diligently with them to ensure that we do have a plan if things go one way or the other. But again, just to mirror what Patrick said, it hasn't really affected us, the industry as a whole, out of the box. But we have to be prepared for what that next bit of news might offer us. Do you want to add to that, Patrick? Do you have any?
Julie, the Argentina meeting, I think, was in particular importance, and it was a big sigh of relief to hear the news that came out of that. That meeting did set a specific countdown of 90 days. Angela kicked off. We're close to meeting. So we're in this prescribed period of 90 days, and that's given, I think, the industry and anyone who's involved in monitoring and managing the conversation, looking very closely, working with contacts you have through the associations in Washington to understand what are the developments, and watching the news as they come out. And the news that's come out so far has been favorable.
I can tell you what I'm not watching, and that's Twitter. I think, I've been following a lot of the more business news feeds, and, definitely Argentina, and more along the lines of meetings where there's actually some action. And the current administration has went over in meeting with China. That's what I'm really focused on, and the outcomes of that.
Russ, can I come in? I think one of the other things to keep in mind too is, remember, there's 3 big balls in the air. We've got the NAFTA talks going, we've got steel and aluminum, and we have the 301. So any progress in a direction of resolving any of those disputes is also positive momentum. NAFTA has been now signed as USMCA. It's going to take a lot to get over the goal line, but at least that's moving in the right direction. That helps with a lot of the other sort of tariff talk as well. We're going to have to resolve those issues with Canada and Mexico as well. And I think generally speaking, they are at the table. And right now is not the time to sort of back off on being involved. In fact, in a minute, each one of you can actually help on this as well, because we need to continue to put the pressure on. We need to continue to talk to your local legislators, with your governors. This is an economic issue. We've been across the country, and it's not just impacting your industries, but look at what's happening in terms of economic development. A lot of the major projects that have been put on a hold, this level of uncertainty is certainly something that you want to see this great growth of the tax cut, continue to propel our economy, not move the other direction. So I think we're all cautiously optimistic, but we also think this is the time to double down and get involved. I'm going to put this up here, and I'm going to ask another question to the panel, but you can do it. You can actually text Tariffs Hurt. Get out your phone. You can do it. It takes 2 seconds. Each of these will send a message right to your members of Congress. And this is a great program as well. This is happening across the country. And so it involves them in the way that we can sort of continue to have an engaged conversation with your members. So I'm going to ask the panel, next question on here, turn to it a little bit about sort of other solutions. We've heard about, mitigating your risk and new markets. And, have there been any ahas to you in this process this year that you would share, and things you want people to sort of have on their radar? What should they potentially be thinking about if the situation changes dramatically? Things that you wish maybe you would have known last July when, as you mentioned so well, I was shocked it actually happened. Advice, things people should be looking for, what would you say?
Certainly. Our industry is a luxury industry. Winter sports is just that. And we've gone through the ups and downs, and we've seen different issues that have affected our business. And during these times, we band together, and Russ and Dino mirrored that, where there are good partners and there are great relationships and there are historical relationships, and there's been a lot of help back and forth. And I can say with confidence that majority of our suppliers are coming up with contingency plans in the event this changes, different pricing lists that will help mitigate this. But it really is going to come down to the consumer, the end of the road, and what is the consumer willing to bear. And the resort towns, we're in a very luxurious position. If you were in Park City this weekend, maybe it wasn't as luxurious as you wanted it to be with Sundance, but there was an abundance of people, and they were spending money very quickly and without hesitation. And but when you get outside of a resort community and you get into an urban environment, that's where we're going to start to see decisions being made. And so the best thing that we can do is really work with our membership to understand the actions and how you can work with the supplier and the retailer and how we can communicate this back to the end consumer.
So stay involved, pay attention.
Stay involved, pay attention.
Right.
And I got $5 if anyone can name the skier. Anyway, on your slide.
Advice.
Sure. Interestingly, one of the things that come out of this whole series of trade events is the importance of the subject matter experts inside companies who are customs experts, who get the gobbledygook, who know the codes, who can decipher it all and give the business, help business formulate strategy. So is this for better or for worse, the rise of the customs professional and the exposure to those people, and the importance of having good specialists who can interpret and then present business risks, high level to the senior C-suite people, as well as people who can engineer within the rules solutions to help mitigate impact. I think it's come out of this series of events, and I think it will continue to be important.
So great point. So you've got people who can sort of translate what's happening, but then do something about it. Don't be paralyzed.
Yes.
Right. Dina?
I don't know. I think, just being aware of risk in business. whether it's tariffs, whether there's so many different factors. And this was a big eye-opener for me. We were kind of riding the little jet, right? And things were going great, but it can change overnight, and you have to calculate those risks. And we're a small company, but we have a small group of leaders in our company that we're going to pay more attention to risk and what can happen, whether it's tariffs or other impacts globally.
Right. So keeping your ear to the ground.
As far as Jan's is concerned, we've kind of been on the same game plan or business plan or model for the last couple of years, and that's we have attempted to continue to grow our retail side, but our service side has saved us. So we're pushing more for them in the mountain biking rental, the ski rental, fly fishing world, things of that nature, and we let these poor guys deal with the tariffs, and then we'll see what happens wherever the cards may fall.
Great advice. I think we have time for a couple more questions before we wrap up the panel. Any comments? Out there? I'm going to throw. Oh, yes.
If you don't mind, I think one thing that was eye-opening, and I think this is for all of us as consumers, is investing in good quality products. And this is not a Hester pitch, but consuming less, investing in products that last. And if these prices and these tariffs do happen and the prices increase, I think that's going to be even more relevant. People are going to be more selective about what they buy, whether it's a car, gloves, what have you, jacket, and make it last. We consume too much.
Right. And so sort of as we wrap this up, if you have just one last word, if you want to send a message to the president, you want to send a message to your members of Congress, what would that message be?
On the spot.
You can think about it
Thank
for a
you
few
very
minutes,
little.
too.
The message is, we're a small industry, and we don't get it, and but we're not going away, and we're here for the long haul, and we're not gonna back down, and we're gonna keep charging forward.
Right.
Arrive at mutually agreeable trade pacts, and pay particular attention to our industry, quite simply.
I'd say, do more due diligence, really analyze. You can't have this blanket list of 200 and some pages of tariff codes that you use and leverage to negotiate political gain. We've all gotten sucked into this. Hopefully the outcome will be positive, but I think you have to look at each industry individually and see the impacts, whether it's the farmers, the glove manufacturers, the retailers, how this impacts us all, and how it has.
Yeah, there are too many other ways to negotiate this deal. It's a little too much, too quick. And remember, you're just hurting the voters. They will let you know.
That's a great voice. Well, this panel has certainly shared some really important topics today. We've got to work in this together. We're not alone. There's a lot of other folks who are trying to run their businesses and make a living, but also serve customers with excellent service and excellent products. So this matters. This is a process, so we get to get off the sidelines and be part of it. So anybody in this room can be part of engaging their members of Congress, speaking on the list, speaking directly, sharing your stories. And it's a personal story too. These are individuals who are not only employed in these industries, but also benefit from having these products in their lives and the choices that they're making. So such an important topic today. Again, I want to just thank you for your leadership in SIA and the outdoor industry and snow sports for being here, being part of this very important dialogue today. I would like to ask you to join me in thanking our panelists for sharing their stories and hope that you all get involved. So we're going to be looking for that silver lining, just as we are a great day on the slopes. So thanks everyone for being here this morning.
Thank you.